Gathering intelligence on threat actors and vectors. Exercise 1, actors and threats. Threats actors are the entities who are the originators of the threats. These actors can be internal, such as disgruntled employees, malicious intruders such as hackers, natural disasters such as floods. Threats actors can be individual or group. This can range from script kibble, that is script deployed, developed, developed by someone to someone who is highly expert in conducting attacks, such as nation state. The script kiddie would be slow, would be low skilled, but a nation state would use highly advanced mention of conducting attacks. Actors, actors, their attributes and threats. There can be different types of threat actors. Each threat actor can have different attributes, which is their characteristics, features, or methods of attacks. For example, a threat actor can be characterized as internal and external. An internal threat actor is someone who is employee or part of an organization. An internal threat is also known as the insider threat, which is covered later in the exercise. In an external threat actor is someone who conducts an attack from outside the organization. They are characterized as someone to be dangerous and extremely skillful. Each type of external threat actor have a level of sophistication and uses different threat vectors that include processes and tools. It is also important to note that the threat actors, specifically the external ones, are well funded and resourceful. They have either their custom tools or use the tools borrowed from the hacker group. For example, the Anonymous group is one of the big hacktivist group that use a third party tool named Low Orbit Ion Cannon for conducting distributed denial of service attacks. Advanced persistent threat is a traditional attack. A hacker gets into the system, does the damage, and move out. However, APT attacks are different. The attacker gains access to the system or network that stay there for a long time. The security controls all fail to detect APT attacks. Unlike the traditional attacks, which may cause the damage to the system or network and get detected in a short period, the APT attack quietly keeps exfiltrating the data without being detected. The APT attacks usually do not cause damage and therefore do not attract attention since there are no noticeable activities within the system or the network. These attacks go unnoticed and manage to exist within the network or system for a long time. APT attacks have several characteristics that set them apart from traditional threats. Well-target data focus look for high-value information, undetectable, well-organized, well-funded. People conducting APTs are high-skilled and use sophisticated methods. They look for valuable information such as intellectual property, secrets, design critical business information. It is not necessary that the APTs only focus on the large organization for data. They can also target political parties and even nations. With the nations, they can target critical infrastructure such as power grid or nuclear facilities. The process that APT follows define and research target, complete initial instructions, compromise user credentials, move laterally, keep a low profile, and build a strong foothold, exfiltrate data, cover your attacks. Insider threats are generated by the individual who are either the organization's employee or are closely associated with the organization as a vendor or third party. It is difficult to detect insider threats because insiders are virtually difficult to detect as attackers. Consider an example where the attacker tried to hack into your network. There are various security controls such as firewall blocking access. However, in the insider's case, they do not have to face the perimeter security or the security control configured on the edge of the network. The insiders are already inside the network and have access to the various resources on the network. The insiders are usually not seen as threat to the organization's resources. They have legitimate access to the resources that exist on the network. Several insiders have may have more than the required access, meaning they can access and exploit the weaknesses that may exist within the network and its resources. Types of insider. There are types of insider, different types of insider. Pure insider is a person who is part of the organization and is legitimate user. The pure insider has permission to and privilege to the internal network and the resources utilized by the organization. Hence, these are able to connect to the network and access the resources in the organization. This gives them the capability to cause maximum damage. Insider associate is someone who is not directly part of the organization, but he or she is third-party vendor or a contractor. The insider associate can also be security guard or even receptionist who can be a contractual resource. They can have limited access to the network, resources, or even the facility where your organization has the office. For example, a security guard may simply have access to the papers that are left out unattended on the employee's desk. Some of the papers may contain confidential information. This information can now be passed on the malicious entity. Insider affiliate is someone who can be a spouse, friend, or acquaintance of an employee. This person can obtain the information such as user credential or security badge from the employee and access the network or even the facility. Outsider affiliate are external entities which are employees or do not have a connection with an employee. The outsider affiliate can attempt to find entry into the facility or the network using different methods. It could be through obtaining credential of the individual or breaking into a wireless network or gaining access to the network. There, there can be two types of insider threats, intentional and unintentional. Intentional, this can be insider who have access to the internal network and its resources. They are the entities who have the opportunity to conduct malicious intent. In some cases, these entities have access to confidential and restricted information. An example can be personal assistant to the organization's CEO, who would have access to various resources such as their email or budget, etc. If the secretary decides to sell the CEO or company's confidential information or someone simply triggers them to share the information, then this would be an intentional insider threat. This insider could be driven by motivations such as anger, revenge, ideology, divided loyalty, or even the work that are that they are doing. Another motive could be a personal gain such as monetary. They may steal the information and sell it outside to the outsider, for instance, competitors. In this scenario, if the secretary steals and shares the information to a malicious entity, the entire set of security control within the organization network or on its perimeter network becomes useless. An intentional insider is the one who do not have any malicious intention but accidentally become a threat to the network and its resources. It is important to understand that Even though it is unintentional, their activities can be malicious, having their consequences. Some of the unintentional activities they may perform are accidental data deletion, accidental data modification, incorrect usage of privileges. The consequences of the unintentional act can be as dangerous as intentional ones. For example, if the healthcare professional makes incorrect modification to various patients' data, it is considered a serious mistake. The doctor may end up giving the wrong medication to the patient based on the data shown on the system. This kind of unintentional attack may occur due to lack of attention, but the consequences can be detrimental. State actors, nation states are known for their cycle espionage against the nation. They are hired by one nation government to conduct an attack against the government of another nation. These are hackers who have sophisticated methods and techniques that they use to conduct the attacks and can target some of the following government agencies, critical infrastructure, industries with sensitive data or property. In most cases, and nation-state hackers use custom tools and target the zero-day vulnerability and other vulnerabilities that have been known but are still present in the application and operating system. One of the nation-state's key attributes is that they are highly convert, covert and therefore most of the attacks conducted by them rarely came into the news. They, they however, are highly focused and have a set target whom they exploit to hacktivists. A hacktivist is a hacker who perform hacking for either a political reason or wants to bring a social change. Activists may perform a hacking due to ideology difference with the government or political party. The activists perform the attacks to gain attention toward their ideology or highlight their intention of social change. In most basic terms, you can call them the internet version of activists. The activists can also be part of a group that acts as a team. They often use simple methods of attack. Distributed denial of service is often a key method of act, attacking the government's web infrastructure, such as government portals. Most famous activist groups, Anonymous, known for the famous attacks such as the Fine Deal website, Operation Tunisia, Operation Egypt, Operation Syria, Operation Darknet, Anti-Semitic, and CIA attack. NullSec, known for the famous attacks such as the Sony data breach and Sony PlayStation Network hack. ScriptKiddies. A ScriptKiddies is someone who does not have a hacker expertise and really relies on ready-made tools to write the code. Due to the lack of expertise, their attacks are generally not sophisticated. Critical syndicates, criminal syndicates, are also known as organization crime leader, organized crime, turn out to be the one of the biggest threats of the internet. Unlike some hackers who are into hacking for either fun or causing some level of damage, the organized crime hacker are serious criminals. They have moved away from the traditional kind to hacking in cyberspace. Organized criminals are individuals who are multi-skilled and have sophisticated methods in conducting their attacks. The hackers conducting organization crimes are known novices with basic tools in conducting the attacks. Rather, these guys are into causing serious damage to the organization, such as extorting money using ransomware, stealing intellectual property, stealing industrial secrets and confidential organization information. They use sophisticated tools such as botnets, automated exploit kits. Hackers, by default, when you hear the term hacker, you think of a shoddy person who is actually involved in breaking computers. This is a popular perception, however, the perception of hacker is not completely true. A hacker can be good or bad depending on the task they perform and the intention he or she has. Broadly, the hackers are categorized into three different types: white hat hackers, black hat hackers, gray hat hackers. White hat hackers have deep technical skills in which they use to prevent the system from waking up rather than breaking them. This means that they find the flaws in the system and help the organization fix these flaws. White hat hackers, also known as ethical hackers, are either consultants or on the organization's payroll. They have responsible for performing penetration testing and vulnerability assessment. They limit themselves with only finding the vulnerabilities and flaws but not exploit them. They have supposed to inform the organization of any vulnerabilities found. One of the key points about the white hat hackers is that they perform tests with the organization's permission. Black hat hackers, just like white hat hackers, the black hat hackers also have deep technical expertise. They are not people with good eh, intention, but they break into the system for personal or financial gain. These hackers breaking and damaging the system, which could be stealing valuable information, erasing data, stealing intellectual property, and harassing or stalking someone. Black hat hackers does not work with the commercial tools. They would either write their malware or security tools or use the hacker tools. For example, a hacker may simply rent a exploit kit or purchase a license. Serenity exploit kit can be purchased. Hacking tools is another exploit that is easily available on Google. Gray hat hackers are a combination of black and white hat hackers. The black hat hackers qualities consist of breaking into the system without the owner's permission. The white hat hackers qualities consist of finding the vulnerabilities and information of the owner. They are usually on the lookout for some type of monetary reward if the owner does not pay the reward. They may sell the vulnerabilities to another hackers or even put them online. Shadow IT, consider a scenario in which your organization has several strict security control implemented. Being a developer, you need to frequently test your application, which in the network does not allow due to security controls. You set up a small network and multiple desktops and a switch and continue with the application testing. The IT team is unaware of this setup. You have now performed the role of shadow IT. Shadow IT works to circumvent or work around the bottlenecks that they face on the network. As the game example, you could not find a way to test your application and therefore set up your network. So to circumvent the network security control, you set up your network test. application. In this way, you have to use the ITC resources to beat the security controls. Competitors. Often competitors of an organization hire hackers to penetrate its network. For example, organization one might pay hacker to penetrate the organization two network and steal valuable information. Alternatively, the competitor organization may also get hold of an insider to provide the confidential information. Assumes that there is a frustrated employee, but he has a good amount of confidential information. The possibility is that he will approach the competitors to sell the information, or if the competitor finds out about such as employee, they might approach him, or if it's easy to get the information from the insider rather than hire the hacker who may not get the information. Exercise 2, threat vectors. Is someone who conducts an attack. Threat agent can use various methods in attacks. For example, threat actors can exploit vulnerabilities in an attack. The method or techniques used by the threat actors are known as the threat vectors. The threat actors can use different types of attacks vectors. For example, a threat actor can simply exploit a vulnerabilities. Another threat actor may use social engineering method to get an organization. Some of the key examples of the threat vectors are unpatched vulnerabilities, brute force or cracking, distributed denial of service, domain shadowing, or hijacking credential reuse. Direct access is a common it is common for the network administrators to expose the web server and other network device to the internet. Anyone with the appropriate permission can access the system and device. When there is direct access available on the internet, it also allows hacker to break into the system. For example, a hacker may simply launch a distributed denial of service attack to bring down the system or even attempt to break the password. One possible solution is to put the system and device behind network access translation to prevent them from being visible on the internet. Wireless network is found in almost all organizations of, if not secured properly, a wireless network may simply become the entry point into a network. For example, an unsecured wireless hotspot can be easily compromised and then lead the attacker right to the network. Email. There are billions of emails being sent and received by individuals. A research study by Verizon concluded that 94% of malware has delivered by email. Another research study by Checkpoint mentioned that 64% of the organization have been victims of phishing attacks. The above example is the above is an example of a malicious email attached to the email as an executable file. When executed by an unsuspecting user, may result in the installation of malware on the user's computer. In the email body, there is also a URL close to examining the link show that it is not valid to the bank website. When a user unsuspecting click the link, it will direct the user a, to a fake site where the user might involve sensitive information that can be used by the attacker for further exploit. Supply chain involves several entities, right from the producer organization, supplier, and customer. To the products and user, several steps are performed in a supply chain. At each step, it is possible to let some of the steps go unsupervised. In a real incident in 2008, a supply chain infection has had a major impact on an organization which had produced digital photo frames that had been infected with a virus. When a user inserted a USB drive to copy file into digital photo frame, the virus would copy itself to the USB drive. Later, when the USB drive was attached to a system, the virus would copy itself. The result was that the organization had to remove the product from the market. Another good case in this context is the Android device. There have been cases where the Android was infected with malware inserted into the device during the supply chain process. Such devices are released in the market, and the end user do not know that there is a malware which may be designed to steal the user's information. If such an infected design connects to the network, the malware can spread further. Social media users often put several personal details on the social media account and make it public. For example, you may add your date of birth, mobile number, and place you live on social media sites, but leave it to the publicly visible. Hacker often scan social media accounts of their targets to gain more information. For example, hacker may use this information and gain access to your email and social media accounts. In social media accounts, account takeover or several other types of attacks are possible. Some of the common attacks using social media information are social engineering, social phishing, and impersonation. Removable media users use removable media such as USB drive to copy file from one system to another. If the USB drive is infected with malware, there are high chance that the system to which it is plugged in to be infected. The infection to USB drive is not a new phenomenon in the year 2008. USB had become pretty common, and that was the same year when they were used the attack vector. Over the years, the USB drives were continued to be used as an attack vector, but with different types of malware that cause different types of damage. Cloud, just like any other medium, a cloud environment can also serve as a threat vector. A threat actor can use an unsecure cloud system and unit into a pod. They can be cloud malware injection. If a cloud system is compromised, then it can be used to launch various types of attacks such as DDoS. It can also be possible for the threat actors to use a public cloud to attack an on-premise data center. It is important to note that cloud system and application also have vulnerabilities. If the threat actor find the vulnerabilities, they can be exploited. Exercise 3, threat intelligence sources. To be able to tackle threats, you need to know threat intelligence sources which can provide up-to-date information. There is no single method that can be considered as only source of threat intelligence. To be defender, To be a defender of your network, you need to ensure that you use various threats intelligence sources together to tackle threats. Open source intelligence is conducted on the content of information that is free to use and is in the public domain. You can find data or information available and use it for various purposes, such as analysis. In the security domain, open source intelligence is about using tools and techniques to find information. It is important to understand that anything that can be found by the security professionals can also be found by hackers or any kind of threats actor. Therefore, as a security professional, you should have a strategy to perform open source intelligence to find the information beneficial to any threat actors. You should locate and remove such information for the public domain. OSINT is a part of reconnaissance space and it helps you collect important information from public resources. A threat actor has a clear plan in mind to find information about the identified target and can be searched from different sources. However, one of the key issue of OSINT information is that you, as the threat actor, may end with a wide variety of quantity of information. This may delay the process because the more information you found, the more time you spend filtering and finding the relevant information. There are different cases on OSINT. Source identification, the threat actor identifies source from which information can be gathered. Data harvesting, the threat actors collect information from identified source. Data processing, the threat actors process and identifies information that can help in enumerating the target. Data analysis, the threat actors perform data analysis of information that was processed in the previous phase. Result delivery, this is the final phase of OSINT, which information about the target is finalized. Several sources can be targeted in OSINT. Some of the key ones are social media, OIS, repository search engine, closed source or pro- proprietary intelligence is the opposite of the open source intelligence. The closed source is also known as proprietary intelligence. It's about gathering information from closed source and it is not generally available in the public domain. Some key personal sources can include business information, legal data, educational record, banking information, medical record. Most close intelligence sources are meant to be confidential or secret and have limited access to a selected individual. This type of information is considered the most accurate and reliable as it is validated and stored with a limited access. In most cases, regulation protects such as information, for example, in the case of health information, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in the United States of America refers to protect the patient's health record. Anyone dealing with health records must be regulated under HIPAA. These records need to be protected as defined with the regulation. The closed source or proprietary source information key intent is to ensure that its privacy, confidentiality, availability, and integrity must be protected. Therefore, gaining access to this type of information, even though it can be difficult as a prime source of information that is already validated and up to date. Some key company or business flows or Proprietary information is marketing information. They include a competitive position or marketing strategy. Manufacturing information that may include future product information, formulas, or the methods to develop the product. Financial information may include the cost of manufacturing the product, targets, profit, balance statement, and other pipelines. Research and development may include the research information on a specific product that has not been created it is or is in its inception stage. There are four key pillars of intelligence or informational gathering. These are known as CORE, which stands for completeness, accuracy, relevance, timeliness. Completeness is the intelligence process or information gathering must be complete in all senses. It should provide an appropriate level or of detail and gather a level of information that must help conduct a full attack. As a security analyst, you must use this information to find loopholes and protect the infrastructure by filling said loopholes. To be able to respond to threat, you need to have complete information and sufficient detail. Threat intelligence must provide sufficient details to enable a proper response. Accuracy intelligence is that is gathered need to be accurate. If it is accurate, it will lead you to make in, incorrect decision that can severely impact the infrastructure. Incomplete intelligence can also cause severe financial and time-consuming consequences. Therefore, reliable resource need to be used. Relevancy intelligence that you gather must address a threat so that you can protect and assert of or target. If you gather information about the threats that are not relevant to your organization, then such intelligence is of no use. Timeliness, the intelligence that you gather must be prompt. If you are engaging with a target or trying to protect a target, you need to acquire the information before the attack occurs. Getting the target information after the attack has occurred will be no use as the attack could have been prevented if the information was available beforehand. Vulnerability database are centralized repositories that collects, maintain, and update the vulnerability information. When vulnerability in any application or device is discovered, it is then added to the vulnerability database by its owner. Several vulnerability databases are available on the internet. Most of these vulnerability databases allow you to subscribe to the feeds, providing an instant indication as to when the vulnerability is added. Public and private information sharing centers. There are several public and private information sharing centers that can provide information related to security threats. It is established to create specific industries and they are meant for sharing information. They help bridge the gap between the public and private sectors by sharing the most recent security related information. They are meant to protect the critical infrastructure across different industries such as This organization gather trust information about their domain and then share it with the other organizations in both the public and private sectors. There are various ISACs across different countries which are Canada Global Mining and Medical Information Share Analysis Center, Europe Energy Information Sharing and Analysis Center, India National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. Healthcare, which is the ISAC, is the healthcare sector, focuses on strengthening supply chain. It is also focused on building collaboration between the public and the private sector. One of its main agenda is to safeguard the patients' health data by providing best practice to healthcare organizations. Some of its responsibilities are training and education, highlighting the importance of building reliance into operation and activities that are performed in daily life. It mainly targets the following healthcare official, policymaker, organization, general public. Financial FSIs focus on the financial sector. It is non-profit corporation that was established by the member organization in the financial sector. The key role of the FSI subplays is to ensure the following: helps the organization build reliance and continuity of the infrastructure, share trust and vulnerabilities information with the organization in the financial sector, helps the organization in training and building collaboration with the other organization within the financial sector. The aviation ISAC is mainly focused on the aviation industry and help organizations globally by sharing the information related to cybersecurity. It shares the information with the organization of vulnerabilities, threats, and incidents as and when they occur from time to time. Some of its key tasks are share the threats information as and when threats occur, help in building strategies against threat that occurs, help in implementing the best practice in building and secure the silent infrastructure. Dark web is a part of the internet that is underground with several other names such as darknet and deep web. What you see on the internet is just a small portion of the other larger part of the internet runs in the dark web. Many users are using dark web for intelligence activity, hacking, and various other reasons prohibited by the law. The security professionals and law enforcement team do use the dark web to gather threat-related information. There are forums, a website, and even e-commerce website that sells material that is prohibited by law. Forums in particular are keen interest of the security professional as they can gather various types of intel from the ongoing discussion. Indicators of compromise. When an attack occurs, it is difficult to trace the compromise indicators or the attacker's method. OpenLock provides a method to address this challenge by providing a standardized format. It helps in defining the standard format for describing artifacts that are discovered during the investigation. IOC can be a various type, and some of these are unusual network traffic, is either inbound or outbound. Unusual activity performed by an administrative or privileged user account. Unusual changes in the operating system or registry. Unusual connection established from unknown sources. Unusual DNS modification and request. Untimely system patching. Automated indicator sharing is the invention of the Department of Homeland Security in the United States. The idea behind AIS is to provide threat indicator in real time to the federal government and other organizations. With real-time information sharing, a threat actor can use a particular threat only once because the information has been shared with other organizations and federal departments. Predictive analysis is a method in which you can predict the threat and risk in the future. It stores historical and other types of data to make prediction of the threat that can occur in the future. Some various methods or technologies are used in predictive analysis, which are include data mining, machine learning, artificial intelligence, statistics. There, these are not only methods and technologies for technologies for predictive analysis. An organization may use other methods and technologies depending upon what they are looking for and in the information sources. File or code repositories. It is now common practice to use shared file and code repositories to share an application's code between peer peers for ease of access. When a user writes code and wants to share it with others, a code repository such as GitHub is used. Developers often copies the private file or code file into their private repositories, which are then shared to the public repositories to be reviewed by fellow developers. Anyone can search the public repositories and use the shared information. The information collated from public repositories can be used for the attacks. For example, if the if the threats after spying a vulnerability in an application code, it can look for the same application deployed on the internet. Then the vulnerability within this application can be exploited. Various other types of information such as host name and IP addresses can be tracked, profiled, and told repositories and can be held that threat actors find more information about infrastructure. Exercise 4. research sources. Information about the threats can come from various sources. These sources are usually well researched to obtain information about the threats, flaws, and vulnerabilities. Vendor websites. When a vulnerability is detected, the vendor who developed the application will disclose it on its website. The detail on the vulnerability and patches or solution that will help the user fix the vulnerability will also be available on the vendor's website. Consider this example of Microsoft, which is mentioning the DNS server vulnerability and the solution remediate the vulnerability. Vulnerability means it is a, it is a difficult for it is a difficult task for an individual or an organization to cope with the disclosed vulnerabilities an individual or the organization will be most concerned with the vulnerabilities of the application or operating system that they are using. However, it is difficult to keep abreast of the vulnerabilities of even a limited number of applications or operating systems. For example, let's assume that the new vulnerability has been discovered in Windows Server, but you are unaware of it. You have several Windows Server systems that are exposed to the internet. In such scenario, these systems are likely to be compromised if the vulnerabilities is not patched. However, the organization or even the individual should keep up the vulnerabilities as and when they are discovered. Vulnerabilities field are good method to get the latest information about the vulnerabilities. Vulnerability fields are simple syndication feed that deliver the information once you subscribe to them. When you subscribe to the RSS feed, you get an instant indication of vulnerability when it is added to the database. Conference. Several organizations conduct conferences to update their partner and vendors about the threats intelligence. Some of these conferences are paid and other can be free. Consider the following URL as an example. Academic journal, cybersecurity professional will publish cyber-related academic journal that will contain information on cybersecurity best practice, cyber risk, resiliency, cybercrime, and warfare, and various other cyber-related topics. Many journals will also contain cases studies related to cybersecurity incidents that occur. This journal can be published at a regular schedule, mostly quarterly. Request for comment, cybersecurity research organization that publish security-related content. For example, academic journal will request that other cybersecurity professional check and validate the published material. This is to ensure the validity and integrity of the content. Local industry group, such as a government or private body, provide the latest cybersecurity information, including threats, policies, stress adversaries, etc., they own responsibilities of researching and searching, sharing information with the federal, public, and private organizations. For example, in the United States, the National Security Agency is responsible for providing threat information. They are also responsible for research in the cybersecurity domain, providing support to the military and threat intelligence. Social media is a good research source. You can follow several industry leaders and other organizations to get the latest threat intelligence and this related information. For example, Twitter is a good source of such information, as shown is an exhibit below. Threat feeds provide information on the threat and threat actors. This type of information can be handy and useful for the computer security incident response team who can update their data about threats and threat actors. Threat feeds also direct the CSIRT team to update their incident management. There are various types of threat feeds available on the internet. For example, organization named threatfeed.io provides threat feed which can also be downloaded. Different organization contributes to their list. For example, Alien Vault has added an IP reputation field as shown in the exhibit. Adversary tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is a good there is a good old saying: a known devil is better than an unknown devil. Each threat actor has a unique style of operation and use specific techniques and methods. You should know these methods, styles, and techniques. Even if these threat actors conduct their attacks, their method and techniques fundamentally remain the same. For example, Anonymous, a hacktivist group, use a traditional DDoS attack using low orbit ion cannon. If your organization is doing something that Anonymous does not like or support, they warn you and then conduct a DDoS attack. The majority of their attacks have been successful against the corporations such as PayPal, Visa, and MasterCard. It is good to know that it is good to know the TTP or threat actor. If you also have the indicators, it adds value because you know for sure that there is a attack coming your way. Exercise 5, threat map, depicts the occurrence of threat in real time. Several cybersecurity organizations have live threat maps that are displayed the threat data in real time. For example, Checkpoint.com has threat map that displays a great deal of information such as top target countries, top target industry, top malware types. If still interested in exploring more threat maps, here are some URLs that you can explore. Task 1, use threat map. Using a threat map, you can determine where the attacks are originate and which countries are being targeted. In this task, you will use live threat map. To do this, perform the following steps. Click the Microsoft Edge icon in the taskbar. In the address bar of the Microsoft Edge, type the following URL. Notice that the world map is displayed with some curves line. When you when you view the map, you will notice that the lines from a specific country is connected to another country. The point from where they originating in the location from where the threat is originating. For example, the given map, the originating threat point is Poland and the target is India. Wait for a few seconds and then check the threat map. Notice that the target countries change. Notice that at the present, the right and the left pane is not visible. This is because the size of the window is smaller than the web page data. The Microsoft Edge window, click Settings and More, then click Next Zoom. You need to reduce the zoom size to 67 and click anywhere on that screen. is that the right and left panes are now visible. The left pane is real time, keeps getting updated multiple times in a second. These are types of attacks such as malware, phishing, or exploit. The right pane displays the following: top target countries, top target industries, top malware types. In the right pane, click the first country that you see under the top target country section. The country underscore name dialog box is displayed. Notice the type of attacks being conducted in this country. Exercise 6: Vulnerability databases. It is true that all software application software and infrastructure or system software has vulnerabilities. Some vulnerabilities have not been discovered yet, and others are fairly well known. There are many sources or threat intelligence available across the internet. Many vulnerabilities are published in an online searchable database called the National Vulnerabilities Database. It is easily accessible and is maintained by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is part of the United States Department of Commerce. This database is much more than a list. It includes a complex scoring and evaluation system. The details on thousands of known vulnerabilities, and NIST defines vulnerabilities as a weakness in the computation logic found in the software and hardware components that, when exploited, can result in a negative impact on confidentiality integrity. NIST database is very specific to the software and hardware components and version, and often fairly technical in its explanation. The acronym CVE, Common Vulnerabilities Exposure, is also used to describe vulnerabilities in this database. As additional research source, move information, including workarounds and permanent solution for specific vulnerabilities, may be found on software vendors' websites. last one is the common vulnerability scoring system. When you find several vulnerabilities within your infrastructure, you would probably not know how to rank them or assign scores to them. CVSS helps you assign a score to each of the vulnerabilities. For example, you may have vulnerability that risks your data's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Using CVSS, you can determine the score. The score are calculated based on several metrics. Once you define these metrics, you would be able to determine the CVSS score of a vulnerability. For example, a score of 10 to a vulnerability would make it severe. You can also use CVSS calculation that can help you calculate the scores. To be able to determine the CVSS score, perform the following steps. The Common Vulnerability Scoring System version 3 calculator page is displayed on the base score section. Select the following matrix. Notice that the score is automatically calculated to 7.5, which is considered to be high. Notice that the score is automatically calculated to 5, which is considered to be major. Mitrata is a knowledge base that provides the information on the adversary method they have collected from a real-world incident. It is an open database that can be used by an individual or an organization. The information that is provided can be used without any changes. It contains the information that anyone can use to develop their threat models. It is knowledge. The it knowledge base is widely used across different sections such as public, private, government. The organizations developing security products also use this knowledge based on the integrate the required information into their products. You can view the database on the following URL.